Apple, hello. Are you going to help me on my cooking video today? Now, I want you to pay close attention. And keep in mind that there's people out there who are watching. Say hello to the people.
Hello out there, you people.
Good girl. Very good. Okay, so the last couple of recipes we did were meatless dishes. We had a pasta dish and a salad. But there are people who do enjoy eating meat. And this is really my favorite dish to make that contains meat. It's a steak dish, but first I have to tell Apple the story of how it came about. Are you bored? I didn't even start the story yet. Okay, Apple, listen to me. Listen to me. Years ago, when I was a young man, I went on my first vacation to Europe. I went to Italy with a friend of mine who had lived in Italy a few years before and knew some people there. And we did some touring all around the country, but we spent quite a bit of time in the area around Pisa and Livorno, around Tuscany, northern Tuscany, and the Ligurian coast. One night we were invited by an Italian who was friends with my friend, and he made this recipe, which for an Italian recipe I found very, very different. It wasn't pasta, it wasn't anything with tomato sauce, but it was a flank steak recipe. So I'm going to share that with you and with all those nice people out there. And we'll make it just the way this man made it in Italy, a lot of years ago. Okay? Good. All right, you watch. All right, this is the steak. You can be on a stakeout. Yeah. Okay, so we have a flank steak here. Flank steak, in this case, is about 1 2/3 pounds. And this is going to feed 4 of us. The first step is to prepare the steak for the marinating process. So we take the steak out. This steak looks like it's a bit thick. So before I even start to marinate or tenderize, I'm going to pound it down just a little bit so that it flattens out. So for this part of the process, Bootsie will be watching. Yes, this is food. Don't fall now. Be good. So I have an ordinary mallet here. You got a nice weight behind it. Put the steak between a couple of pieces of wax paper. And, I thought I had about 1 2/3 pounds, but it looks like we're getting a few more pounds in here. I don't want to get it too thin. This is not one of those, like a veal cutlet that you have to pound down really thin kind of recipes. But most flank steaks will not need this. Most of the time you'll have a thick end and a thin end. This one has a thick end and a thick end, so eat your heart out. It's going to be dog food for you. So I've gotten that a little bit bigger, a little bit flatter. And I'm going to use ordinary tenderizer on it. And I give it a liberal sprinkling because this really helps to make the meat as tender as possible. And in order to help that tenderizer get into the steak, I take a knife and I score it first in one direction and then in the perpendicular direction. Perpendicular. There's a word that you probably said to your math teacher at some point. When are we ever going to use that word? Here it is. And we do the same thing on the other side. One of the things I really like about this recipe is that almost all the work can be done ahead of time. This should be marinated a minimum of about 6 hours ahead of time. I'm doing it the day before, which will really give it a good chance to marinate. I'm going to use ordinary, almost broken Pyrex baking pan. And so this is the hard part. We have to prepare the marinade. In order to make the marinade, you will need a small onion, a lemon. Are you watching? You're not watching. A lemon, watch. Thank you. Some olive oil, some cheap white wine, very important ingredient, Italian seasoning, and some kind of a shaker to mix it all up in. So I'll start with the onion, and I'm going to take that onion and I'm going to cut it into little tiny pieces. By the way, while I'm cutting the onion, something that a lot of people may not be aware of, especially you should be aware of it if you're a dog owner, onions are not good for dogs. Now, they're not poisonous like in the same way that chocolate or raisins can be poisonous, sometimes even deadly for dogs. Not really poisonous, but they will give your dog one heck of an upset stomach and probably make them vomit. So definitely avoid giving any onion. If this falls on the floor, the dogs are not going to get, you're not going to get any of this, that's for sure. You might not even see Bootsie at this point. I think she realizes that this is not going to be her dinner. And she's settled down and taking a nap. Alrighty, so that onion is going to go into my little shaker. When I'm scraping things from the cutting board like this, I like to use the knife, but I turn it so that the cutting edge is facing up. Because if you scrape a lot of stuff on the cutting board using the cutting edge, it's going to get dull pretty fast. Lemon. Hey, lemon. Do you like that? I like to extract the juice by using one of these little lemon squeezers. The wedge goes in there. Squeeze. The lemon, by the way, aside from giving flavor, also helps very much in breaking down the tough parts of the meat, tenderizing it, even more so than the tenderizer or any other ingredients we put in. Bootsie, you're looking disinterested again. If you're disinterested, what do you think those people are? Come on. Our aim here is to entertain and inform. I forgot to mention one very important ingredient before. Seems a little weird in an Italian recipe, but soy sauce is critical to this recipe. So now that I got the diced onion and the lemon juice in there, I put a generous amount, at least a quarter cup, if not a half cup, probably a quarter cup. We add our olive oil, again, not a lot. A fair amount, quarter to a half cup of cheap white wine, and a generous amount of Italian seasoning. It's probably a tablespoon or two. Put the top on the shaker. Make sure that top is on real good. Top has to be on securely, because if you start doing this and there is a beautiful Cavalier sitting right next to you, you don't want this to get on her coat, because then she will have to be bathed. So we give that a really good shake. Now, you want to make sure that you get both sides of the meat covered. So I'm going to lift up, coat the bottom of the pan, making sure there's a bunch of onions in there. And pour the rest over the top of the meat. So it's going to look kind of like that. All I'm going to do is put some plastic wrap over the top to seal the air in tightly. Put that in the refrigerator to marinate. In this case, it'll marinate overnight. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 times between now and when I cook. I will take it out of the refrigerator, flip it over to make sure both sides get marinated nicely. But that's basically it. And then it's just a matter of broiling tomorrow. So we'll put that in the fridge. Bootsie, thank you for your help. For now, say goodbye to those nice people.
Goodbye, nice people.
Thank you. Boy, I'm sure fans of Bella will be pleased to see that she is here, and she's hoping to get some of that steak. Are you hoping? Oh, she's so wiggly. But I don't think she's going to get any steak at all, no. All right, so this steak has been marinating overnight, and you'll notice it's actually changed color. And we are going to actually scrape most of the onions off of it because the marinade becomes a sauce, and we want onions for that sauce. And I have a nice hot charcoal fire. I'm going to set my 8-minute timer. This gets broiled for 8 minutes aside. It looks like Apple would like to have some steak. Steak only has a few minutes to go, so while that's finishing up, we have the marinade, came out to about a cup's worth, with the onions and all, and that actually becomes the sauce for the steak. We have to cook that and get it nice and hot. I'm going to put it in the microwave. I'm going to give it at least 30 seconds. We want to make sure that we cook it so that any bacteria from the raw meat gets killed in the microwave from the cooking. And that can be poured right over the steak, and it's absolutely, oh, I can't tell you how delicious it is. Okay, and I can tell whether this is ready or not because oh yes, if the little container is nice and hot to the touch, that means it's cooked. Okay, that steak is beautifully seared on both sides, and that will seal the juices in. You can let this sit for a minute or two to kind of get all those juices settled in and finish up any cooking that's necessary. When you slice the steak, you want to go perpendicular to the length of the steak. So the steak, this one is not a particularly long one, but we can see the length of it goes this way. So I want to slice this way. And I slice on the bias, so we get a nice wide slice, but not a very thick one. And you'll notice that as we get to the thicker part of the steak, we go from medium to more of a rare piece of steak. So even though this is essentially an Italian recipe, we're going to serve it with sort of an Americanized international flair. And we're serving it with some mashed potatoes. And we've got some green vegetables. I like to put a little bit of parsley on the mashed potatoes. Makes a very colorful presentation, and it also adds a lot of very nice flavor. By the way, when you carve the steak, make sure you get a carving board that has these little grooves in here that catches all the wonderful juices in there, because those juices are great. What I especially like on the steak, though, is that marinade that's been cooked in the microwave. It really enhances the flavor. Now comes the best moment of all. I get to taste this. Dogs, Bella, can't have any. Tig, nuh-uh. So, flank steak Italiano. If you like steak, nice. So, I hope everybody's doing well out there. I hope you're eating as well as we are.